This is Strange Days by The Doors. Let's talk records. It is 1967 in Los Angeles, California. Jim Morrison, magnetic frontman of The Doors, was going through a bout of depression. Their debut album had just been released, but the charismatic singer was going through a gloomy period. Drummer John Densmore came to visit him to cheer him up and take him for a walk. When they came back, Morrison's mood had changed, and he was very excited about lyrics of feeling out of place, paranoid, and isolated that had emerged in his head. A couple of years before, Ray Manzarek, who played keyboards with his brothers in a band called Rick and the Ravens, by chance ran into fellow UCLA film student Jim Morrison in Venice Beach. They started talking, and Manzarek was curious about a notebook that Jim was carrying. Morrison told him about songs he had written that had been stuck in a concert inside of his head. Manzarek was curious and motivated him to sing something for him. As he was a bit shy, Morrison was reluctantly convinced to sing lyrics for a song that he had written called Moonlight Drive. Manzarek was fascinated by the haunting and beautifully surreal landscapes of his words, and also by his mesmerizing voice. He couldn't get the song out of his head and began to think about the music that he could play with Jim's lush and sublime lyrics. He asked Morrison to join his band, and drummer John Densmore, who had been in a band called Psychedelic Rangers, joined shortly after. They decided to change the name of the band to The Doors, after Aldous Huxley's book, The Doors of Perception. Manzarek's brothers left not too long after, and guitarist Robbie Krieger joined later that year. As The Doors began playing around town, cementing their path in the Hollywood scene, Morrison developed a seductive and electrifying stage presence, and the band incorporated a unique blend of psychedelic rock and jazz influences. They eventually moved on to better things, becoming the house band at the Whiskey A Go Go. At the suggestion of Love's frontman Arthur Lee, Jacques Holzman, president of Elektra Records, went to see The Doors live and was very impressed, signing the band soon after. They released their self-titled debut album January 4th, 1967. The band started touring but also began recording their second album between tour breaks. As they were working hard touring and recording, not to mention becoming notorious after being banned from The Ed Sullivan Show, when Jim Morrison refused to change the lyrics while performing on live TV, their second single, Light My Fire, the song went to number 1 on the singles chart, and the album itself reached number 2. The lead single, People Are Strange, was released ahead of the album September 4th, 1967. The song was written after a depressed Morrison returned from a walk with drummer Densmore, feeling exhilarated with words bursting inside of his head about people being strange when you're a stranger in his dejected state. Krieger composed the music later on and recorded the solo in one take. The song peaked at number 12 on the Billboard Pop Singles chart. Strange Days by The Doors was released September 25th, 1967 on Elektra Records. It was produced by Paul A. Rothchild, who had produced The Doors' previous album and would go on to produce most of their subsequent records. The album cover was shot by photographer Joel Lee Brodsky, who had shot The Doors' debut and the famous Young Lion photograph of Jim Morrison. The band set out to experiment with innovations in the studio, adding unusual instrumentation to old and new songs that they had, while showcasing Morrison's evolving poetic depth and captivating vocals. The album closes with another standout track, When the Music's Over, a dramatic piece with dark and enchanting lyrics challenging listeners to confront their existence and the fleeting nature of life. The track slowly builds in intensity, exploding into a compelling and chaotic crescendo. The song Moonlight Drive that Morrison had sang to Manzarek back in 1965 in Venice Beach was also included on this album. While not quite as praised as their debut, the album did receive positive reviews and it reached number 3 on the Billboard Albums chart. Love Me Two Times was the second single, released September 25th, 1967. The song was written by Krieger after Manzarek begged everyone to go home and write a song. The track was recorded back during their early sessions for their debut album, but it was not included on the first record. The single was edited down to 2 minutes and 37 seconds from the original longer album version. It was released around the same time Morrison was arrested on stage at the New Haven Arena in Connecticut for supposedly inciting a riot when he went on a rant against police who were acting as security that night because he was harassed and roughed up backstage while he was there with a girl. The song was deemed a little risque for many radio stations, especially in New Haven where it was banned, which is something that baffled the band. The single reached number 25 on the Billboard chart. Even though Strange Days by The Doors was successful, reaching number 3 on the albums chart and receiving good reviews, it didn't quite match the success and fervent reaction of their debut earlier that year. Later reappraisals, however, have hailed the album for being ambitious and having a more centered concept, calling it a dreamlike and spooky psychedelic masterpiece that may or may not have influenced the gothic rock movement later on. The album has been certified platinum. Rolling Stone magazine ranked it number 407 on the 500 greatest albums of all time list in 2003, and then number 409 on the 2012 Revisited list. If you're a record collector like me, Strange Days by The Doors is a mysterious and ghostly masterwork that should be in your collection.